US President Joe Biden and British Prime Minister Boris Johnson say that Russia could be launching a false flag attack after reports of shelling in eastern Ukraine. Ukrainian officials say that a school in the Donbass region was hit by tank fire from Russian-backed separatists. Moscow said there was an exchange of fire between government forces and rebels and blamed the Ukrainian side for firing first. During a tense UN Security Council session on Thursday, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken said Russia is creating a false pretext to attack Ukraine.
Russia plans to manufacture a pretext for its attack. This could be a violent event that Russia will blame on Ukraine, or an outrageous accusation that Russia will level against the Ukrainian government. We don't know exactly the form it will take. It could be a fabricated so-called terrorist bombing inside Russia, the invented discovery of a mass grave, a staged drone strike against civilians, or a fake, even a real attack using chemical weapons. Russia may describe this event as ethnic cleansing or a genocide, making a mockery of a concept that we in this chamber do not take lightly.
Well, Russia's Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs, Sergei Vershinin, dismissed the accusations put forward by the United States.
I would like to finally say that you will be able to resist the temptation to play to the cameras and will not make this meeting of ours into a circus. You will not present here baseless accusations saying that Russia allegedly was going to attack Ukraine. I think we've had enough speculation on that, including the Security Council meeting on the 31st of January, convened by the United States. Long ago, we clarified everything and explained everything. And the announced date of the so-called invasion is behind us. So therefore, my advice to you is not to put yourself in an awkward situation.
Well, this increase in tensions in the region follows NATO's second day of meetings to address the Russia-Ukraine crisis. Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg maintains that Moscow's military build-up is not normal activity and that there's been no withdrawal of troops. That's despite the Kremlin insisting it is pulling back its military from the border. However, US Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin says more military units have moved in.
We see some of those troops inch closer to that border. We see them fly in more combat and support aircraft. We see them sharpen their readiness in the Black Sea. We even see them stocking up their blood supplies. You know, I was a soldier myself not that long ago, and I know firsthand that you don't do these sort of things for no reason. And you certainly don't do them if you're getting ready to pack up and go home.
Well, for more on this, let's cross over to Brussels now. We can speak to our correspondent, Maeve McMahon. Maeve, to begin with, we understand that Russia has now responded to the US's security proposals in writing. What do we know at this stage?
Good evening, Helena. Well, we do understand that Russia has sent a written letter to the US delegation regarding these security concerns. We spoke to the US ambassador to NATO regarding this very letter, and she confirmed that they had received it. That said, she did shy away from revealing the contents of that letter, saying that it should be up to Russia to do so. And she also pointed out, and this is what a lot of sources at NATO over the last 2 days have been saying as well, that one can be sending letters to and fro for the next couple of months, but what really needs to happen very, very soon is that both sides sit down around the table to discuss exactly what's going on and try and find a diplomatic way out, instead of having letters that can be misinterpreted by different ways by both sides.
Maeve, you also sat down today with NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg on the very day that essentially NATO has accused Russia of lying about its troop numbers and its deployments. What did he have to tell you?
I did indeed, and that's the second time I sat down with the NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg in just a couple of weeks. And the last time I spoke to him, it felt like the mood was a little bit more optimistic. But today he told me that the trust in Russia was at its lowest that it's been for a very, very long time, that none of the NATO allies even knew yet what the intentions of Vladimir Putin were, but that they were very, very concerned about them. And that's why the focus of that meeting over the last 2 days was how NATO can defend itself better and about beefing up the support in Eastern Europe, about beefing up sending more troops to various countries there in case there would be an attack. We can take a listen now to Jens Stoltenberg speaking to me earlier at the NATO headquarters.
He used the phrase, I think it was on Monday or earlier this week, that I was cautiously optimistic. That was based on what we then saw, or the signs that came from Moscow, that they were ready to engage in a diplomatic effort. And we still strongly believe in NATO that we should sit down with Russia and find a political solution, a political way forward. But what we have seen after that is that there has been no follow-up on the ground. We haven't seen any withdrawal of troops, any de-escalation. And of course, Russia must do what they say, and that's actually to withdraw forces. And that remains to be seen. So until we see a real withdrawal, of course, there will be a permanent threat of a Russian invasion.
So a very sceptical Jens Stoltenberg, Secretary-General of NATO, then speaking to me a little earlier, but adding as well how open NATO allies are for dialogue and for a diplomatic outcome of this tension.
All right, Maeve McMahon, bringing us that sit-down interview with NATO Chief Jens Stoltenberg. Maeve, thank you for your reporting. Well, in Kiev for us tonight is our correspondent, Sasha Vakulina, and we can speak to Sasha now. Sasha, to begin with, regards to that shelling in Donbass. NATO has warned it could be part of a false flag operation. What is the sense there in Ukraine?
Volodymyr Zelensky, Ukraine's president, called the shelling of a kindergarten in Stanitsa Luhanska a big provocation. And he said that this is why, exactly because of the cases like this is why the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe should keep its monitoring mission, should keep its delegates and diplomats in Ukraine, because their monitoring activities are an additional deterrent. Over the past week or so, we have heard from many countries their calls on the citizens to leave Ukraine immediately because of the possible attack. That was the US, UK and other countries. And some of those nationals are, of course, the members of those monitoring missions of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. And this is why it is important for them to stay there and not to leave the country right now. Whether this could be a false flag attempt, Foreign Minister Kuleba said that this might be, but also he said that Ukraine is very much ready for anything, and he insisted that this is why Kyiv and Ukraine are cooperating with the international partners to make sure that such attempts fail.
Well, what about those efforts with international partners then, specifically with NATO, for example? What are Ukraine's NATO ambitions? Because President Zelensky said today that this was a goal and not a dream, and it seems that that position has been moving quite a bit in recent days.
Since the Euromaidan, the Revolution of Dignity 2014 that happened right behind me here at the Independence Square, Ukrainians only increased the way they want to join the NATO and the European Union. And this is not really a choice for them. There is no option when they would admit that they cannot join the alliance and they cannot join the European Union. This is why all the rhetoric now about whether Ukraine can join the EU and NATO, and whether it's just a dream. There is no scenario in which Ukraine's president, Volodymyr Zelensky, can come here on the square and tell the people of Ukraine that Ukraine is not going to join NATO. And with everything that's been happening since 2014 and with the recent escalation in the past few weeks, I can tell you Ukrainians only wanted more.